Thank you. Commissioner, just quickly, I'd like to say thank you to you and the governor for that proposal that's going out, the $2 million to establish either a 50-bed residential treatment unit or 225. Sorely needed, as I think many of my colleagues have pointed out. What I'd like to urge to you and the governor, though, is that there were 20 counties that were identified as needing those services. So this is a competitive process, and obviously there's a lot of need everywhere. And if there's any way that we could actually increase the amount of residential beds that are available, I know that it would help a lot of lives and a lot of families. So I would ask that you look at that, because really 2 million, 50 beds doesn't even scratch the surface. So thank you, and thank you for being here today. Yes.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening. We won't.
Thank you. Kathy, how much was it? 2 million? 2 million. 50 beds for 225 beds is just no, 50 or 5. 2 million. 2 million.
How much time are each of them getting? 5 minutes? Oh, and we have 15. That's 75 minutes.
3 hours and 25 minutes.
All right.
Going for the record right now.
Are you here for this or the next one?
I'm here for the next one.
You can go eat your sandwich and eat another one before we'll be done.
I could have gone to a farm and got the chicken.
You could have gotten that
Yeah, I'm going to tell them.
$100 a pound
I'm going to tell them that.
Oh, you remember that?
I gotta check what cost that $2 million.
Next, Michael Sierrita, President and CEO, New York State Rehabilitation Association. Behind them, I didn't do that, and there's also Ann M. Hardiman, Executive Director, New York State Association of Community and Residential Agencies. I would like Harvey Rosenthal, Executive Director, who's next, to come down and get closer. And I'm going to ask the second person always to come down so we can move a little faster. We're on the 5-minute clock, and we'd like to get this thing to finish sometime this evening.
Chairman, I'm Ann Hardiman, and I'm partnering with Michael Sierrita to speed things up.
The clock begins. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Michael Sierrita with the New York State Rehabilitation Association. NYSRA and NYSACRA are two associations of providers of services to people with varying disabilities, and we find ourselves working together on an awful lot of issues these days, particularly the issue, I think, of minimum wage, which I think is our first issue to talk about. We as organizations have been highly supportive of increasing wages for individuals who provide direct support services to individuals with disabilities across the board for now the better part of several decades. But we are, I think, as equally bewildered as you are in regard to the governor's minimum wage proposal as it pertains to how the state of New York can possibly continue to uphold its statutory responsibilities to support people with disabilities without funding from the state to pay for those services and supports that it procures from organizations like our members. As I think many of you know, these are organizations that are primarily, if not almost exclusively, funded through public funds. Without those funds, these organizations do not survive and cannot continue to provide those supports on behalf of the state. Excuse me. I think that the impact of that is very clear. We're looking at severe staff cuts, severe service cuts, and likely insolvency for the organizations that are our members and continue to provide those services currently. I just want to point to the fact that these are organizations that are currently on the brink right now. Many of them face between 15 and 20% staff vacancy rates right now in their ability to compete for qualified workers to be able to deliver these supports and services to people with disabilities. They're on the precipice of a significant problem right now with the minimum wage increase that is proposed but not funded. I think that pushes many of these organizations right over the edge, and I think that will pose a significant challenge to the state of New York to, as I said before, uphold its statutory responsibility with regard to the services and supports it makes available for people with disabilities. Two other items I will briefly touch upon. We've heard several things today about the need for transformation and moving our systems in different directions. I think we see that both in the OPWDD world, the OMH world. However, we don't see necessarily significant investments in the kind of resources and technical assistance that would be necessary for these organizations to make such changes. We see sheltered workshops trying to move to integrated businesses, ICFs to IRAs. We see, I think, also a need on the mental health side for additional community-based supports to avoid more extensive and expensive inpatient services. We would like to see more of those kinds of resources in this kind of budget. And lastly, before I turn it over to Ann, I would say we generally strongly support the concepts of expanding community-based services and supports. We've heard today on multiple occasions from you all about what we hear on a daily basis in regard to the residential needs of individuals with developmental disabilities. We see that on the behavioral health side as well, where we could benefit greatly from expanded services and supports to be able to meet those needs. We would strongly encourage those things to be incorporated into this budget.
So I want to thank you for your support of the direct support professional. Last year in the 2014-15 state budget, the state legislature charged OPW with a study around the merits of developing a credential for DSPs. That report was delivered to you a few weeks ago. It's an awesome report. It outlines the details and policy rationale for a credential. It demonstrates the negative impact of low wages and turnover and the positive impact of a credential on worker retention. One of the things we'd like to ask you to do is, and the state has endorsed the report, but there's no dollars in the budget to begin a credential, and we ask you to make that commitment. On managed care readiness, the shift from fee-for-service to managed care and has happened in some sectors, behavioral health, but not in the DD sector yet, as the commissioner testified, the acting commissioner. We support the move to managed care to the extent that it can be demonstrated to improve the lives of individuals with people with disabilities. The shift will be a challenge for our members, and the most critical step is readiness and an assessment for agencies to know if they're ready. And we ask the state legislature to support in the budget managed care preparedness, similar to what has been provided to the behavioral health field to get ready for managed care. And I want to thank you for your attention and for hearing from us.
Thank you very much. Assemblywoman Gunther.
Very quickly, Michael, you know, sometimes when you have an ask, if you were to put a number on an amount of money that you'll need to be prepared, both of you, Ann and Michael, I mean, what's the number? What do you need to become managed care ready, and what do you need?
In behavioral health, we've seen, I think, a $10 million investment in last year's budget for health information technology, some of which is available to providers of services to people with developmental disabilities. But we've also seen the creation of what's called the MICTEC, the Managed Care Technical Assistance Center, which has proven to be highly effective through a few million dollars over the past few years to really provide education and technical assistance to these organizations. That's the kind of thing that starts that conversation and helps organizations realize that they either are prepared and have that that infrastructure in place, or that they need to make investments, which we would then probably need to come back, frankly, to the state and say, if you're interested in going to this kind of a model, we're going to need to make, for example, major investments in our health information technology.
So the first step is assessment. First is assessment, and then coming back to ask what the dollar amount is.
I would expect that there would be additional dollars associated with that, just because of the nature of this kind of a shift.
So you're saying for assessment 2 to 3 million, 2 to 3 million assessment-wise?
I think 2 to 3 million would be an excellent start to start that conversation around the education of providers and making sure that they are prepared.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for testifying.
The next hearing will be held at 5 o'clock this evening, and that's the workforce hearing will begin then for those people who want to be there. New York Association Psychiatric Rehabilitation, Harvey Rosenthal, Executive Director.
Good afternoon. I want to express my appreciation to the chairs of both committees and the members, and I want to congratulate Senator Young on your being in that position. You come from a mental hygiene background, so it's great to have you up there. I'm Harvey Rosenthal. I am the director of an organization, a coalition of people in recovery from mental illness and providers located around the state. I'm worried about both halves of that partnership, the consumers that rely on recovery services and the providers who are really at risk in trying to stay in the sector and provide them services. This is very personal to me because I'm 46 years in recovery. I'm 41 years in the field, 18 years I worked in a state hospital, in a clinic, in a rehab program, and 23 years as an advocate. And in 23 years, I've never seen our sector more battered, more afraid, more angry. There are three main areas in the budget area I want to talk about: infrastructure and operating costs. These have not gone up for years. People are at risk. You've heard the problems about operations, information technology, staff retention. The problem is particularly severe with housing. There is no health and no hope and no recovery without stable housing. Too many people don't have access to housing. Too many people don't have housing at all. And for too many people, their idea of housing is a prison cell or a jail cell. So we really, and you'll hear more about this later, but our calculation is, in terms of the housing sector, we need $93 million to bring those housing providers up to speed and to be able to operate given all of the flat budgets and the rising costs. Workforce, you've heard a lot about it. I won't go all that deep into it, but the minimum wage puts tremendous pressure, and the lack of a COLA. I think the COLA we have now, someone told me, is $1.50 a week for someone making $50,000 a year, and we have a lot of people not making $50,000 a year. The third area is managed care readiness, and I'm very intimately involved in that. I was on the Medicaid redesign team, behavioral health work group, and I sit on the steering committee of the value-based payment group. I have been hopeful about the prospects, but I'm very concerned about the lack of TA, the lack of investment, and part of the DSRIP initiative is it gives billions of dollars to hospitals, even though the purpose of the Medicaid redesign is to keep people out of hospitals. In the meantime, the community providers, who are the ones that are going to keep people out of hospitals, are seeing negligible increases, if at all, as you know. Our sector is going to risk. It's going to manage care risk. It's going to only survive if it's able to bill and do work. But in that regard, we're at risk for our survival. How am I doing? 2 minutes. Okay. The OMA, I mentioned this, so Glenn and Liebman, you'll hear from him about this. A number of us have put together a proposal that's on the back page of your material. We're asking for a $90 million investment infusion in mental health services. And this is made all the more serious because the OMH budget not only offers a lot, it makes savings this year at our expense. There's $20 million in managed care readiness funding that has been replaced by BIP money, which is federal one-time only money. We can't be making savings. We should be adding money to our budget. There's 45 million of supported housing funds, which are now the money's being taken out and it's going to bonding. Reinvestment, which is a critical funding stream, has been valued at $110,000 a bed. This year, 100 of the beds closing are valued down to $55,000. That's outrageous. In criminal justice, I'm going to switch to other issues. I want to thank Senator Ort, Senator Cook and Carlucci and Mrs. Gunther for your commitment to crisis intervention teams. It's making such a difference, but we need more of it. And frankly, the governor needs to own this issue. Raise the age, we're very much involved with and supportive of, and presumptive Medicaid eligibility, hooking people up to Medicaid. There is some money in the health department budget. I'm trying to find out more about it. I would ask for your help in that. We need to make sure people leave on Medicaid. I would say the money we're asking, and the hospitals are getting billions, we're asking for hundreds of millions. I have to say that with apology. But that makes this a three-way sort of agreement. You don't have that kind of money, but you know who does. We need a three-way agreement that really brings that into play. I do want to talk about prescriber prevails. We need to take that out. We need an ombuds program and managed care readiness. And we need something I can't read, so I'll stop here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, we have Mr. Abenadi.
Just,
sir, sir, come back.
Yes, absolutely. Very briefly.
Yeah, he's very brief.
Crisis intervention teams. That's something we don't talk about too much. I'm glad you mentioned it. It seems like we're starting to do this thanks to the money that the legislature put in last year. I'm assuming the governor kept that money in this year, or do you know? Do you know if he cut it out?
There's $1 million that's been reallocated. I think I think it's in the process of being fashioned, but it's really up to. It's actually up to the legislature to decide what happens there. It's been reappropriated.
It's been reappropriated, so it's back in the governor's proposed budget, or it's not there?
Yeah, but, yeah.
Okay. Has anything started with these teams yet?
Say it again, please.
On the street, has anything started to happen yet? Do you
Yes,
know?
I think the money Senator Ort put up went out a couple of years ago to 8 localities. That was $400,000. He came back with $500 the next year. Thank you, Senator. And Mrs. Gunther came back with $1 million. So those monies, I don't know so much about the second batch. The Senator probably does. I don't know yet about the $1 million. I think we're about to find out. We're going to have meetings.
Well, if you could check with your people and give us a report back as to whether the money's actually getting out onto the street.
It is, and I've heard, I can't remember all the counties, but I've kind of checked back, and I know the person that's doing the TA, and I'm told it's a real success.
Well, I personally would be interested in getting a report
so
we can judge how much more money we need to do how many more communities.
I would be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Just want to say one last thing about managed care transition. The state had given us $110 million, and there's 20 or 30 that has yet to go out. So we need tens and tens of millions of dollars to transition. Otherwise, we're at risk for survival.
Assemblywoman Gunther.
So Harvey, before you go, so what we're saying right now is rather than injecting $45 million, we're bonding that money. We're replacing $20 million with a one-shot through BIP, but we're not really using money that's going to be available on a year-to-year basis to continue with improving the services in the community. So I think that when we talk about investment, it shouldn't be a one-shot or a replacement or bonding, because you can bond today, but you're going to have to continue bonding in order to provide these services. And someone just asked me about recovery, and recovery happens, and we don't get readmittance to the hospital if we have housing, if we have the therapy that's available and the medications that are available. And so that is the way we save money in New York, by not bonding or anything else, providing the money up front, getting the treatment. And I think that that's a lesson learned time and time again that we really have to listen to.
I couldn't have said it better.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Steve Kroll, Executive Director, New York City, New York State, ARC. And next, in back of him, will be Glenn Liebman to come on down.
Thank you, Chairman Farrell. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me today. I'm very much grateful to the panel members for their friendship and support for people with developmental disabilities, their families, and their professional caregivers. The DD field is really in disarray, and public policy decisions are the driving force. Families are terrified, and the professionals in the field feel like we are drowning. It is a state obligation expressed in law to provide support for people with developmental disabilities. While I'm appreciative of the efforts of OPWDD that are expressed in the Commissioner's testimony today, you'll note that my tone is a little less optimistic. We are almost exclusively funded by Medicaid, as Mr. Searider mentioned before, and we're essentially operating as agents of the state. And therefore, we're almost entirely dependent on the state for the funding, and the state budget has really let us down. We have to ask ourselves, in a budget that invests tens of billions of dollars, how can human services be so ignored? Our employees start between $9.50 and $11.50 an hour, and the average pay is between $11.50 and $13.50 when they reach their pinnacle of their careers. Rather than repeat what's been said today, and you've had a great dialogue today, let me give you some numbers. NYSARC employs 28,500 people. 77% of them are direct support professionals or other lower wage workers that provide direct care, such as teacher aides in our preschools or the bus drivers that bring people to and from the programs. So we have about 22,000 DSPs. We already have a vacancy rate of about 8%. In other words, we can't fill all those jobs, so we're using thousands of hours of overtime. There's no more important job than taking care of other people. And it's plain and simple. An unfunded minimum wage will bankrupt NYSARC, and which is the state's largest provider of DD services, and it will also drive people out of the programs. I have a very simple formula for you. The minimum wage, if the pathway that has been proposed, already implemented for some sectors through the wage board, could be done by legislation, it goes forward. The minimum wage is going to go up $1.75 in the coming fiscal year throughout the state and $3 in New York City. If you fast forward to 12/31/2017, not that far out, it's a 30% increase throughout the state, 45% in New York City. What does that mean for us in dollar sign? It means a 16% reduction in NYSARC's workforce. It means by 12/31/17, we'll have to reduce our workforce 4,600 people. Now, give or take a little bit, for every FTE we have, we're providing support for between 2 or 3 people. So you reduce an FTE, you've got choices. One choice is to take away people's choices. In other words, to diminish their quality of life. So we've been talking about today how we want people to be more integrated rather than isolated. Well, integrating people into the community means giving them choice and the ability to go out and do things. Well, if we go in that, if we have to reduce our staff, we have to say, well, either we're going to serve less people, and that means more people will have to go into the state-operated system, or the state will have to come up with some other way to serve them, or we're going to have to reduce the amount of service they have. So instead of having 4 staff working with 4 people or 8 people, we'll have 2 staff. So that means that more time sitting watching television, because we can't take you out to do what you want to do. We're moving in the exact opposite direction that we want to go. And so we really need to look at funding the minimum wage for the direct support professionals. It's $270 million in this budget for all the DD field. Mr. Searider and Mrs. Hardiman, we're all working together on this, all the DD providers, and it's $1.7 billion at full implementation in 2021. We are certainly grateful for the residential discussion that happened today and the Commissioner talking about some new money that's in there, but it doesn't address the culture of no. So the Commissioner talked about the number of people that are waiting for services. Several of you on the panel have joined me with parents to meet with them together who finish their testimony sobbing, who come up and you have to give them a hug after the conversation because they tell you the desperate story of trying to find a placement for their child, who's now an adult child, before they pass or before they're no longer able. So there are 3 things. Number 1, the money, and you've talked a little bit about the money today. Number 2, new development. Right now, we're not doing new development. We're not willing to build a building. We're not willing to put anything in bricks and mortar. We're simply saying, well, as people leave the system, new people will come in. So my version of dealing with the waiting list is that when nobody comes up to you, comes to visit your office and says they're desperate because they've been trying to find a place for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, then we've dealt with the waiting list, because today 11,000 is unconscionable. So we need to deal with that, but there's also the culture. It's a culture of no. It's a culture of no because there's no place to place people. So we need to work at reforming the system, coming up with a new way of measuring what we talked about priority 1 here, we talked about priority 2 here. Essentially, for you to become priority 1, the world has got to be about to end for you and your family. That's not the way to plan for the future of people in our communities. So we need to do a better job. So I thank you for the chance to come and visit with you today. I ask you to read the written testimony, which contains much more about the discussion that was held today. And again, I'm extremely grateful to all of you for your support.
Thank you very much, Mr. Avenatti.
Just like to make one point with you, and I think I want to piggyback on what you were saying. We're talking now about providing residential placements, not necessarily the most appropriate residential placement, but a placement somewhere in a bed for somebody whose world's about to end. From the point of view of your agency and from the point of view of providing good services, aren't you better off planning and saying and then determining what age should this child go into a facility or a group home and have several years of the parents being involved, helping the kid adjust to a new life without parents, helping the kid get a job, helping the kid do what has to, so that he can live a life when the parents die.
You're absolutely right. That's what we all want to do. And we have to remember that in New York State, we're going to have to comply with the home and community-based settings rules that are being set by the federal government within a couple years. We still have people that live in 12-bed IRAs or 8-bed IRAs, and we're going to need to help them find smaller, more community-integrated homes that are maybe 3 or 4 people living together or supported apartments. There's not a penny to do that. And so we're talking about not only 11,000 people that at some point in time we're looking for residential opportunities, and we have to remember, those families have taken the burden for many, many years of supporting these people at home. So they've done their due diligence in not only supporting their loved one, but in lessening the burden on the state. And so the state needs to be there to assist them in the future.
There's just one other question. The numbers that I see here is they're talking about this year 152 people being moved from very high-intensity service locations to moving into the community. Do you have any number that your agency would use as to what it would cost to provide appropriate services for one of those people? From what I'm seeing here, they're providing $21,000 maximum.
Okay, well, I'll tell you a story. It's a public story that we've shared, and we've been asking for help from, and we've not been able to get help. Our chapter in Niagara County accepted 4 people from a state developmental center to come and establish a residence in the community. That chapter, in 18 months, after all the funding that they received, lost $1.1 million on just that home for those 4 people because of the level of intensity and services that's needed. We've come and asked for help, but the system now is set up so it's based on the system where there is no way to come back and say the money wasn't enough. So that chapter is close to insolvency. I don't know that it is going to survive. And that's just one home, and we have 1,500 homes throughout New York State. One home, we've lost $1.1 million. That's on top of the rate that's paid to us.
So the plan that they're proposing just can't work.
We're talking about numbers in the, $15 million might be invested here, and 15 might be invested there, and 120 million there. And with all due respect to the fiscal health of New York State, because I understand we're talking about big numbers, but we're talking about big numbers.
Thank you.